Hello champs, hope you all are doing very good and excellent. So in last classes what we learned, we were learning about the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So there we have discussed already the structure of the stamen and the formation of spores that we learned, that microsporogenesis. Now today we are going to learn about pollen grain. So what is pollen grain? The pollen grain is male gametophyte. Pollen grain is also called as the male gametophyte. Now see, so have you seen pollen grains? If you are taking the anthers of those, hibiscus like that, just keep in your fingers, touch it with your finger. So what you will feel that some sticky yellowish color is sticking in your hands. You don't know what is that? That is the means. You will be amazed at the variety of architecture, sizes, shapes, colors, and designs, yes, seen on the pollen grains from different species. So it's very interesting. Now see, what is the structure of pollen grain? Yes. So now we are going to learn what is the structure of pollen grain. So mainly the structure of pollen grain is spherical in shape. It's generally spherical and measuring about 25 to 50 micrometer in diameter. It's mainly the size mainly 25 to 50 micrometer in diameter, and it's spherical in shape. See here, it's mainly spherical in shape, and it has a prominent two-layered wall. The pollen grain has two-layered wall. See here, it's a two-layered wall. So the outer wall of the pollen grain is called as exine. This outer wall of the pollen grain is called as exine, which is made up of sporopollenin, which is what? Made up of sporopollenin. So it's very hard, it's very tough wall. It's so tough, so much tough due to presence of this sporopollenin that it can withstand high temperature and strong acids and alkali also. Means no one can dissolve this, neither is alkali nor acids or high temperature. It can resist in those condition also due to presence of what? Sporopollenin. Means the enzymes also they can't degrade this layer because of the presence of sporopollenin. Okay, but there is a pore in between this wall. In this exine there is a pore here where this sporopollenin is not present. So that's why there is a pore, and this pore is called what? Germ pores. This pore is called what? It's called germ pores. Now where sporopollenin is totally absent. Now pollen grains are well preserved, they are well preserved as fossils. Because of what? Because of the presence of this sporopollenin. They can be preserved for a long time, they can be preserved as fossils. Now the exine exhibits a fascinating array of patterns and design. This shows a fascinating array of patterns and design. Now just see the inner wall. Let's see the inner wall of this pollen grain. So what is called the inner wall of pollen grain? It's called intine. See, exine outer, intine in. So it's a inner wall of pollen grain is called what? Intine, and it's mainly made up of what? Thin layer of pectin and cellulose. Intine is made up of what? The thinner layer of pectin and cellulose. They are made. Now it is a thin layer, yes, and continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. Now you understand? So the exine layer is very tough due to presence of sporopollenin, and intine layer is thinner and continuous layer of this layer made up of cellulose and pectin. Okay, so here what's happening now? The cytoplasm of pollen grain is surrounded by a plasma membrane. The cytoplasm of pollen grain is surrounded by what? It's surrounded by plasma membrane. So when the pollen grain is mature, when the pollen grain is matured. Yes, it has to mature. So when it will mature, so what's happening? This two cells. It contains how many cells? It contains two cells. On maturation, the pollen grain contains how many cells? It contains two cells. That is, first is what? Vegetative cell, and next one is what? Generative cell. The first one is vegetative cell and next one is generative cell. So when you will see this cells, these two cell structure on the maturation, you can see these two cells. Now the structure, let's see the two cells, how they are. So the vegetative cell is bigger. See here, the vegetative cell is what? It's bigger inside and has abundant food reserved. It's bigger inside and it has what? Abundant food reserved. And a large irregular shaped nucleus. The vegetative cell has a large irregular nucleus, means it's not regular in shape. Yes. Now second one is what? Generative cell. So it's how vegetative cell has a large nucleus, but here what? It has the generative cell is what? It is small and floats in cytoplasm. The generative cell is what? It's small and it floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. So what's happening with the generative cell? That it is small and floats in the cytoplasm of vegetative cell. And it is spindle shaped with dense cytoplasm and a nucleus here. It's a spindle shaped with dense cytoplasm and having a nucleus. So you know that over 60% of angiosperms means what? The flowering bearing plants. Yes, and their seeds will be what? Enclosed. So these 60% in angiosperms, what's happening? The pollen grains are shaded at this two-celled stage. Yes, when the pollen grain is shaded at this two-cell stage. Now in the remaining species, what's happening then? The generative cell divides mitotically. In 60% of angiosperms, you understand that pollen grain is shaded at this stage only. But in remaining 30%, what's happening? The generative cell divide mitotically. It divide again what? Mitotically to give rise to the two male gametes before pollen grains are shed. What this generative cell is doing? It will again divide mitotically to give rise to two male gametes. Yes, before pollen grains are set. So it becomes what? Three-celled stage because it will give two gametes. Yes. So when it's give two male gametes, why? Because we know that the pollen grain is what? Male gametophyte. So when mitotically divide, the generative cell will divide. So it will give what? Two male gamete, and this stage is called what? Three-celled stage. Now let's see. Pollen grains of many species cause severe allergy. You know, I am also very allergic to pollen grains. It what happens that when you're passing through the forest, park, or in your society's park, whatever. So there are some plants which have pollens which may get cause allergy to you, yeah, and this allergy is very much, sometimes you will get skin rashes, sometimes you will get coughing, like that. And you know that chronic disorders, respiratory disorders like asthma, bronchitis, etc., you may get that. Many people are getting that. It may be also mentioned that parthenium, you know, parthenium or carrot grass, जिसको हिंदी में we are saying carrot, gajar घास also. So that parthenium, carrot grass, that came into India how? By imported. This carrot grass is important in India with wheat, you know, and has become ubiquitous in occurrence. And what it's doing? It's causes what? Pollen allergy. You know, it causes what? It causes pollen allergy. Now, do you know that nowadays it's a fashion? You know, it's now become fashion of taking pollen grains tablets, because the pollen grains are very rich in what? Nutrients. The pollen grain are what? Rich in nutrients. They are very rich in nutrients. Okay, so what they are doing? They many people, especially in the western countries, so what they are doing, they are taking those tablets, they are taking pollen tablets as a source of food supplements. Why? Because pollen are very rich in nutrients, and it's mainly as tablet or syrup or whatever they are taking, and it's available in market also, and it's mainly used by whom? Athletes and race horses, because you know why? Because they been claimed that they it increases the performance of these athletes and racehorses. That's why they are using those things. Now see, after maturation, so it shaded. Now after shading, pollen grains shaded. So after shading, what will happen? So sorry. So when once they are shed, pollen grains have to land onto the stigma. What they have to do? Once they land, the pollen grains shaded. So what they have to do? They have to land on the stigma. See here, the stigma of a flower, stigma, style and ovary. This is the female part of a flower. So they have to what? They have to land on this part of the flower, female part, that is called stigma, before they lose viability. Why? Because they have to take part in fertilization, and if they will be not viable, then how they will do fertilization? What chapter we are reading? It fertilization in sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So there they need fertilization for that. So after shedding of pollen grain, they have to just reach to the stigma before they lose their viability. Now, how long? What do you think that how long the pollen grain retain viability? It depends. It depends.